We're back with the Mission43 Podcast, the little podcast that's been talking smack about Tim Kennedy since before it was cool. Today we have Dustin Alger, a former 275 Army Ranger and the newest member of the Mission43 engagement team, coming on as an engagement coordinator, leaving a huge career as a fly fishing bum and guide. He is a man with many a story and the newest member of our team. So let's get after it. Yeah! Welcome to the Mission43 Podcast, a podcast dedicated to discussing the struggles and triumphs of transitioning to life after the military. I'm Dan Nelson. I'm a former Army Special Forces officer who's personally experienced the challenges of transitioning to civilian life. In every episode, we'll be sharing tips, strategies, and real-life stories of veterans and their families who've chosen Idaho for their life after the military. So join us, and let's start the conversation. Dustin, welcome to the team, and welcome to the podcast, bro.
What's up, man? Thank you.
Well, super happy to have you on this team to finally give some relief to Chad, the other engagement dude, the Chad, the engagement guy. But you coming on here in this new studio, too, our new year, new podcast studio here from 1890 Creative. Well, first, give some people an idea of, like, where you started and how you got to be here, the newest team member of Mission43.
Okay. Where I started. Well, I suppose since Mission43 is military related, I should start with my military related experience.
Sure.
So I joined the Army in March of 2001 on an airborne ranger contract, and then got out in 2006 after 3 deployments. And then, let's see.
Nothing eventful happened during that time between March 2000 and
it was
2006, not 9/11 and all that other stuff.
No, it was not a fast and furious time for the United States Army at all.
Yeah. So you were a part of 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, right?
Yep. So stationed with 2nd Battalion, 75th from basically 2001 until 2005. Did OIF1, OEF1, and OIF3 with them. And then I went across the fence to a striker brigade unit that they were standing up with 1st of the 5th Infantry, 25th ID. Did a tour with them with some strikers, then got out after being stop-lost. Was given the nice cold, building of 100 of dudes and just like, here's your, can we swear on the podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, here's your shit. Get out of here. That type of deal. So I did that and realized I needed something to do. So I started school because we had the GI Bill,
That's right.
$100 a month, might as well use it.
Sure.
So I did that to start kind of getting some revenue into the house.
Where'd you go to school?
I started out going to South Puget Sound Community College.
Perfect. So still staying in the JBLM area?
Oh, yeah. Stayed there actually for a while after I got out. Didn't want to take the SATs, so I found a loophole. You can just go join a community college, and they don't really care. So I went there and then got some degrees and credits to transfer to the Evergreen State College. So I went over to Evergreen and did a degree on how to make beer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm really good at making beer.
No kidding.
Yeah, really good at that.
Another reason why we hired him.
Yeah, I'm really good at making beer, in particularly German nut brown.
Ooh, well.
Oh, they're good.
Okay.
They're good. I like German beers.
Nut beer. That sounds good. Okay.
Yeah, nut beer. Yeah, you want some nut? Let's see here. So I did that, got a degree, and then got out and didn't really want to do anything because it was a business degree. Didn't really want to do anything in that arena. So I went on a trip for fly fishing for veterans and came off of that trip.
Who was that with?
I was with a nonprofit called Rivers of Recovery.
Okay.
And I took a trip with them over to the headwaters of the Green River up in Wyoming.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, dude, it was sick. It was the first time I'd really been on a drift boat or a trip like that. And I met this gal who was there doing research from the University of Wisconsin for her PhD. And I was in a boat with her, and I was talking to her, and I was like, wait a minute. Like, you're getting paid money? Like, this is a job. Like, this is an actual profession where you go do this stuff. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, well, tell me more about this recreation therapy because this is silly. I didn't realize you could get paid to do this.
Right.
So basically came out of there, went home, back to my house in Olympia, took the GREs within 2 weeks for graduate school, sent them out to one school, University of New Hampshire, got accepted, and I went out there. And I ended up spending 2 years, almost 2.5, conducting a research project on the efficacy of fly fishing for veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I know. It's
So
like
no
fancy
SATs,
words.
but you did the GREs. You got into grad school.
Yeah.
After bouncing around between state college and community college.
Yeah, there's 2 Rangers, Strong Ranger, Smart Ranger.
That's right.
I was a Smart Ranger.
Apparently so. Well, that's pretty damn impressive. So University of New Hampshire?
Yeah, Wildcats.
Okay.
The Wildcats.
Right on. So in the Northeast is where you learn how to do recreational therapy, and specifically trying to do it in a way that assists veterans recover holistically through the sport of fly fishing.
Yeah. In fact, we dialed it into the modality and found some really good efficacious uses for that specific modality.
Was that
fly fishing? But
was that something that was driven by your own experiences? Like you had 3 trips, right? 2 Iraq, 1 Afghanistan is what you said, I think.
Yep.
And so were you in a position where you were struggling yourself, and did that give you some comfort?
Yeah. So when I got out, like being young and stuff, I didn't really know what to do other than dive deep into a bottle or something like that and self-medicate myself. And then when I was going to school, being 25 and having 3 tours under your belt and going into a school with some 18-year-olds, it's a little bit different in terms of like their priorities and what they're concerned about in life. So, you'd be sitting there in your entry-level algebra class that they're making you take, and some person, I can remember this one specific instance where this girl turns around and she just gave me the valley girl, like, I don't know how to do this. And I looked at her and I just like put my stuff calmly in my bag and walked out to my vehicle, and my buddy had given me a fly rod. And so I got in my Civic and literally drove. There's a Deschutes River, not the famous Oregon Deschutes River, but there's a Deschutes River in Olympia, Washington that has some sea-run cutthroat trout. And so I just drove up like 5 miles through the river and just like walked out in the middle of the river and just started like flailing my arm about. I had no idea how to fly fish like whatsoever.
So I still do.
Yeah. Magically caught a fish, and I was like, holy crap, this is awesome. And it made me forget about the interaction with the person in the school. And I was like, wow, I think there's something to this, like in terms of like not letting myself get built up and want to smash things, and opposed to like going and doing something productive like fishing.
Well, you're brushing over it and making it funny, which is awesome. But at the same time, that interaction you have is something that's not uncommon to a lot of folks like us that come back. And then I'm guessing that young gal that was sitting in front of you in algebra class, that was probably one of the more stressful things she's ever experienced.
Yeah, I mean, nothing on her. She was just like stressed and kind of doing the thing as everyone does in the bubble, of America. And so she was just doing her thing. But to me, it was like, oh my gosh, because
what do you mean like, oh my gosh, like, is it offensive to you? Is it just something so foreign to you? Like, what is it that caused that reaction? Because I know a lot of people know what you're feeling. I'm just trying to get you to put words to it. Because I can't.
I would say in the moment, I felt a lot of things, because at that point, you're still, like, as a young dude, and especially like the early days of the GWAT, right? So they're still trying to figure out what's going on, like, while we're there. And so you're like, why are we there? And you're going to college and you're learning words to put to your thoughts and stuff like that. And so when she turned around and just, is having these like first world American centered problems, and I'm sitting there like trying to wrap my head around like the oil field seizures and like, why were we I'm sitting there, and then she pops in me back into reality with her problems. It stirred a lot of like anger, like anger at first, just like anger at like why, like, that's silly. Like, why are you even allowing that to enter your domain of like what could possibly fluster you for your day? Like, there's, don't you know? Because all those experiences flood back to you, like the kid that you saw, without his legs, the body bags, all this, your buddies getting blown up, all that stuff, and the good times too. And then you're like, oh, that was funny, but then all that floods you in that like millisecond of an interactional moment with this person, because you have all these things going on in your body, right? All your highways inside of your body have been rewired, and so you don't really know how to travel those emotional like highways really like correctly. Yeah. And so you get flooded with all this emotion. It's anger, it's anxiety, it's whatever it is. For me, it was always a lot of anger would come to the front because I didn't really know how to react to something.
The secondary emotion that comes up to...
Right. Because in the infantry, you use anger.
What do you cry?
You wield it as a tool specifically, and it gets you through a lot of, shitty moments.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So yeah, you get confronted with it, and then I just, again, nothing on that person, nothing on Americans, nothing on anything that they're going through, not trying to trivialize their stuff. But when you're sitting there as a young man or a young woman and you're like kind of trying to grapple with these like larger top down, problems that you see.
Yeah.
And they confront you with those things, they can really like set you off a little bit.
It's weird. It's kind of like I would describe it as being misunderstood.
Yeah.
But I think the millennials and Gen Zs and, all the folks younger than us would describe it as being unseen.
Yeah.
Or something like that. I'm not quite sure if that's correct, but they can tell me. There's something to that, but fast forward to you, excuse me, being like this graduate student now and having an increase in time and space away from your deployments, from regiment, from that experience. Did you make a commitment right there where you're like, what I'm going to do is help veterans through outdoor recreation? Or was it kind of like an experiment like, this has provided me some relief, I enjoy doing it, and that's that?
Yeah, so my dad was in worked for the Veterans Benefits Administration for about 33 years. He's also a Vietnam Marine. His dad served World War II in the Army Air Corps. His brother was in the Navy. Another brother was in the Army. Another brother was in the Air Guard or something like that. I've got two brothers that served as well. So growing up, him working at all of these like VA facilities, a couple of them we actually lived on like they're all at these old forts and stuff. Mm-hmm. In fact, one that's popping in my mind is Fort Harrison in Montana. It's a huge property. I think the guard is still out back there. But we lived in those old officer quarters on campus, and then there's like the giant parade grounds, and then across the way is the VA and all that kind of stuff. And, you're playing out front, and you're like, it's summer, and you're like, I'm going to go bug my dad. And so you just go randomly walk around the hospital, and I'd bump into, at that point, back in the late 80s, early 90s, lots of like probably about our age or Chad's age guys that were World War II vets and Korean vets,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought you were thinking like Vietnam guys.
No. Like back, this is late 80s, so they'd be like World War II. So I actually learned to play billiards with a Korean vet that taught me. Yeah, it's an awesome dude. But so I've been in and around vets a lot during my life. Fondest memory is putting on my dad's dress blues and coming upstairs for Christmas and stuff like that. So been around that a lot in my life. And then I got out. And didn't really, the only thing I ever knew like growing up is that I wanted to join the Army in some capacity or join the military in some capacity. That's all I really had planned. Like join the Army, see what happens.
Yeah.
And then I got out and I was like, shit, fuck do I do now? Like what? Well, okay. Oops. So pretty quickly I realized, once I started, going to school that, I gravitated like you'd gravitate towards other veterans. You'd be like, who's that guy that also looks almost 30 going to school, and then like some of your professors had come out that like they're veterans and stuff. And then one of my professors who was a Vietnam vet, interesting story. I had no idea that guys used to jump into Vietnam with nuclear bombs the size of backpacks on their backs.
That's true.
Yeah. And so he was one of those guys.
Oh, Takes a different type.
Yeah. Bob McIntosh, cool guy. So ended up talking to him, and he was starting up a nonprofit called the Veterans Family Fund of America. And basically it was a cash like slush fund for veterans that needed like financial help that were, like, oh dude, I'm in college and my car broke down. Here you go. Here's some money. So he needed a treasurer. I'm good at numbers. And so he asked me to go be a treasurer. And since that point, since like 2006, I've been involved in some capacity working with veterans. So I was working as a treasurer, and then I got done with that school, went to grad school for the fly fishing, then I came to Idaho immediately to work for another nonprofit, and then worked for them for a bit, and then I worked for the Boise VA hospital and all that kind of stuff. So I would say me wanting to work with vets has always been there. It just kind of came out when I after I got out, and I love being with the community.
You grew up in that sphere, even though it wasn't like your dad wasn't a part of the VA, it was the Veterans Benefits Administration, but still, like your brother, your family, everyone had this common thread of service. Did you lean on them at all to help you when you got out, or was that something like a comfort network? Did they have any advice for you? Like, or is it just kind of, maybe it's not even on them, maybe it was on you more, but either way, did you ignore or did it just not exist?
Oddly enough, from my two brothers that served, it didn't really exist because I think so they're both older brothers. One of them, Kyle, he was a scout sniper in the Marines and served in the first Gulf. I don't think he really was in a place to help at all when I was like, he's still transitioning. And then my older brother, Nate, was 82nd. He was field artillery. And he was going through school and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And we also have big family dynamics going on. Mm-hmm. So, not exactly like the best resource for, taking care of yourself. However, my dad is another story. He has been helping like since nonstop. Like he is he is mildly vicariously reliving his transition from Vietnam into America through me. And he's always trying to like help me do things that he wishes he would have done, and or services like that would have been provided to him. Because I think everybody knows most Vietnam veterans were not treated very well when they came back, and his was that story too. So yeah, he's been there and he's been a big help. So
do you think that helps him in his transition? I'm asking because in this Mission 43 landscape, even though we are meant to serve transitioning military members and their spouses, like we have a lot of guys that connect that are from the Vietnam era. Mm-hmm. And they take great care and do a great job of mentoring a lot of us, me included. Mm-hmm. And I think as helpful as it is for me, it seems to be meaningful to them in some way.
For sure. In fact, that was a large part of one objective that came out of the research that I did was is that the model that we were looking at in terms of like the fly fishing model was they had members, so they'd bring new members in and go fish, but then they also had returning members. And a lot of those returning members were individuals that were a little older, and most of them were Vietnam veterans. Mm-hmm. What we found is that those Vietnam veterans, the opportunities that they were creating for themselves through the engagement piece of the fly fishing, they were actually getting more benefit for their own personal transition and mental health through mentorship of the younger generation. So what you would typically find is like a veteran, like an older Korean or Vietnam vet they'll come and kind of like group out, but eventually they'll kind of like narrow down and they will orient themselves towards one specific veteran and then basically be that veteran's mentor and navigator for a transition. And they keep coming back to the same events, and the longer and more protracted the relationship is, the better the outcomes are for both of the individuals.
That's fascinating. So what you're saying is, for all the GWAT generation veterans, what we need is to have the government start another war, and then we can help
some more.
The next group of people. Give them like 5 months.
For sure.
Be fine, yeah.
For sure. Africa's looking pretty ripe. So
yeah, we're good. Yeah. Especially with, it's been almost a year now without any actual, either way. So I'm curious then, so you worked at all these nonprofits here in Idaho. You worked for the Boise VA, right?
Yep.
For a period of time.
Yep.
At what point did you become aware of Mission 43, or did you?
Yeah. So, the first time I had heard about Mission 43, so I was a recreation therapist at the dual facility. So the Boise VA is one of I think 16 to 20 maybe around the country that has a residential facility. So they have 18 beds. 12 of them are dedicated to the substance use treatment, and the other beds, up to 6, were available for the PTSD treatment. So I was a recreation therapist on the team for that facility. And, take people out. We do a lot of exposure therapy, particularly with substance use. Sounds kind of fucked up, but you take a bunch of guys that are struggling with addiction and you take them to the buy one, get one beer night at the Steelheads.
I'm familiar with this type of exposure.
Yeah, it's really tough, but if they can make it through it, chances are, plus you got your tribe there. So, but anyways, doing those types of events in the community, obviously very what's going on here and whatnot. And I think the first time I knew or heard about Mission 43, I think I told you this, was a potato bowl, Idaho Potato Bowl. and they had you guys come out in the field. And at this point, all I knew of 43 was it was a vocational tool and resource. That's all I knew of it. I didn't know if there were other facets to it. And so that's where that was. And then I continued doing my journey with the VA and, all that kind of stuff. And then I retired from the VA / left a little forcibly during COVID. And I knew what 43 was. I didn't know if it applied to me. I'd also worked for a few nonprofits in the veteran space, and I've always kind of been like, okay, I'm very self-sustaining, obviously. And so I always kind of leave these programs to vets that really need it. Like if there's a vet, I'm also closeted introvert. Like, I like to go out in the woods. I'm fine in the woods for months on myself. Like give me my dog and my camper. Like I'm fine. A lot of people would freak out, but that's fine for me. But so I typically tend to leave these resources for the veterans that really need it because, I know, funding is secure for 43, but also funding is a finite resource. And so there's not always opportunities available. Like say a trip that's going out, it has spaces for 8 people. I can go do that trip on my own. In fact, I might, like I said, being that introvert, I might, but I also do really like, hanging out with other vets. So that being said, my parents have had a house in Harris Ranch for years, and I started to see this thing being built. And I was like, what is that? And then I did some research, and I'm like, okay, they're building a field house. Okay, and then you're like for what is this for? It's for veterans?
Is it a field or a house?
Yeah, what's going on here? And then you start hearing rumors, and you're like, there's going to be a pool? There's weights, and there's going to be like
you have to water the field somehow, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so I'm seeing this thing being built, and I'm like, my God, that's going to be like a really awesome facility. And then at that point too, you're seeing this thing and you're like, oh, okay. Like, how do I maybe use that? Cause that actually piqued my interest more than like joining a club to go hiking every like Wednesday or something, I tend to do those things solo. Cause to be honest, I find God in the outdoors. And so I like to be out there alone with him or her. And, so I started to pique my interest because of the things that y'all were like trying to present is more health and wellness based in terms of like your physical upkeep and self. And that piqued my interest because as much as I get outdoors and hike and all that kind of stuff, I don't hit the weights, like Mr. 4 times a day over there. And I know I needed to get back into that. So I had planned, I was like, when they open, I'll like do the orientation and see what's what. And then I got busy doing some volunteer effort stuffs this last fall. But before I did, I told my kids. So for the last 2 years, I've been a full-time fly fishing guide after I semi-retired from the feds up in Ketchum. I told my kids that I would start looking for employment opportunities in the Treasure Valley.
A real job, if you will.
Been telling people I took a jobby job. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I took a jobby job. They're like, what'd you do that for? And I'm like, fuck. Because they're like, you're giving up guiding. And I'm like, I know.
Well,
but this
as far as jobbie jobs go, this is kind of a weird one too.
Well, so I'm not just going to give up. That's what I'm getting to is that I've only ever searched on one site, and the only keyword I've ever used is recreation because I do have the ability to be like, fuck that job. That's lame. I don't want to sit in a cubicle, like whatever, dude, But so I searched, I saw this job, and it was just like one of those serendipitous moments where I was like, you gotta be kidding me. That place that they built, the new thing that's really close to the house I'm staying at, my kids, I told them I'd come here. You're just looking around, you're like, fine, fuck it. Okay. I'll listen. I'll do it, and here I am sitting in a chair talking to you. And I couldn't be happier, to be honest with you, because I'm giving up like a guide life, but to be honest with you, pretty much going to be doing almost the exact same thing-ish, except with veterans now and getting to like use some dormant skills that I have that I think could be useful for some other people.
Well, and we gave you a very nice cube.
You did.
It does have a lock on the outside of the door, but either way, that's just
nice
for me and
cube.
Chad to operate.
It's nice.
Yeah.
It's got a laptop. It's fun.
It does indeed. Yeah. What guiding service ever gives you a laptop?
Not that one.
Well, to go back a little bit, you have a unique ability, and just the short time we've been together, you brush over all these things. From your time in 275 to, this volunteer experience you said that took you away and caused you a little delay in actually getting to come work with us. But what you were doing was hurricane relief stuff, right? And specifically after the latest round of hurricanes in the southeast and Western North Carolina got wrecked, right?
Yeah.
How did you find that opportunity and what drew you to that? Because that was not a paid jobby job.
That was not a paid jobby job. See, that's why I'm weird, because that really drew me. There was a blast. I'm not on social medias. That's why you asked me if I'd watch some stuff. I'm like, no, I'm not on the socials.
You're not a Mission43 Podcast subscriber? Yeah, well, there's only my mom and my dog actually has a YouTube too, so there's two of us.
I'll get my daughter to sign up. That'll be the fifth person.
Yeah.
But no, I don't have any socials. And so after the hurricane hit North Carolina, Hurricane Helene, there was a blast on a Facebook group called Brotherhood of the Scroll. It's for all the bat boys, first, second, third. Mm-hmm. And they put out this guy, Justin Neal, who was in first bat, put out a blast for operators to show up because they literally needed search and rescue and recovery operations. And state and feds weren't doing it. So at this point, given the last couple of years, and I feel like some sentiment with some things that have happened around the country and in the community, I think a lot of us were fed up and we were like, fuck it, I'll be there. Because at the end of the day, there were Americans that weren't getting helped. And I started seeing videos and stuff, like firsthand accounts of like what was truly going on. And it was like making my stomach churn that, our government wasn't there to help us. So I hopped on a plane and flew to Asheville, North Carolina, October 6th of 2024. And I basically spent up until last month there helping out the people in various mountain town communities in Western North Carolina, helping them reestablish their lives, basically make sure that they had the basic necessities like food and shelter. For quite some time. In fact, a lot of them are still looking for food and shelter.
For the rest of us wieners that did not take the step to actually put our ass on the line and do something to help during that situation, was it as bad as it looked in the media coverage?
Yeah. In fact, I would say the media did a pretty darn good job of not showing America what really happened and what is still currently happening, because I think of the lackluster response, and I'm not putting blame on left, right, blue, or red. Just as the government as a whole really hasn't. They really dropped the ball, and
there's a lot of blame to go around.
There's a lot of blame to go around, and you can look at some things, and I don't really have the time or space to do that. They just need to get some money there, and they need to get it going because it's bad.
What did you do?
So when I initially got there were reports that So I went as part of this group that got known as Savage Freedom Release in Operations, which eventually became known as the Redneck Air Force.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was the Redneck Air Force, which is kind of fun, like walking up to people and be like, hey, I'm part of that Redneck Air Force. And they're like, kind of feel like you're starting a new army or something.
That's awesome.
Just kidding, federal government. We didn't do that, nor are we going to overthrow you.
It's super weird because Brad and I have a drone group that we call the Redneck Air Force as well.
Do you really?
No.
Oh, okay.
But that would be cool.
That would be cool. I actually have a hat. So we got known as that, and then we basically had to jump around on helicopters, fly to places that were completely cut off. Like, I don't think people understand the volume of water that came down in a 10-hour. So it was raining roughly 3 inches a day for a week before the actual storm. 3 inches a day is a lot of water. So it was raining for 3 inches a day. All the reservoirs got filled up. And then in a span of about 8 to 10 hours there's the Mount Mitchell Range on the Swananoa side there in Asheville. They got 29 inches of rain. On the other side of Mitchell, up into like Green Mountain and Burnsville and stuff like that, where the Cane River is, they got 37.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And they don't have the infrastructure, and there's draws and creeks and everything. And like these riverbeds are old. I mean, the flooding from this one knocked out the 100-year, the century flood, and knocked it by like 30 feet in terms of like the high water mark.
Wow.
So it just absolutely destroyed everything. It tore complete roads up for miles on end. So, I mean, we're making roads through people's things, driving through like all kinds of stuff. So basically helicopters is how we got around for about the first 2 weeks. So we'd go fly on a helicopter, land somewhere like Bat Cave or Chimney Rock and be like, hey, what do you need? what's going on? And they're like, dude, we need water. We're like, okay. Like, how much water do you need? They're like, how much water can you bring us? And we need food. You know, it starts getting cold. All their systems, like, I think that's what a lot of Americans don't think about when something like that happens. All their systems, septic, gas, water, like they had a lot of mining there, right? So one of the big deals was a lithium mine there in Swannanoa, and that got completely flooded out and brought into the town and then down the river. So for the next however many umpteen years, everyone's they're all wells. They can't use those. You know what I mean? So like you got to think about all this stuff. So as you're there and you're like, the first thing is like, holy crap, get them some water. Okay, holy crap, make sure they're not getting rained on, or get them like some shelter. And then they're like, you know, everyone's like, I want to move back in my house. You know, why would you not want to move back in your house? It's your home. But okay, what is that going to take to do that for you? Yeah. You know, we got to remove 2 feet of topsoil because like that topsoil is basically a Superfund site. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a lot when you start thinking about it.
With the span of like 72 hours, they basically went from what anyone's been to Western North Carolina. It's beautiful. It's a lot like Northern Idaho in a lot of ways, and places out west. Not normally a place that gets hit by hurricanes.
Ever. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not coastal. Nope. It's inland. It's a mountain range, and 72 hours they go from being this beautiful vacation destination to a third world country.
Yeah. Like, no joke. People burning trash, fighting over food supply points. Like, we had to pull security. That was the original reason why I went there, is because we had heard that people for these guys were running supplies out, and then gangs were, like, coming and taking them. Yeah. And so they needed security. And I was like, you got to be kidding me.
We say gangs, too. It's like otherwise normal people that are put in a desperate situation, I'm guessing.
Right.
Not like criminal organization gangs.
There wasn't too much criminal element. I mean, at first you're like, oh, the Tren de Agua is there or whatever, and they're taking water from these people, and it's not really. It's just like, you know, it's the mountains of North Carolina. Yep. There's some stills. There's some people out there with some cook labs and stuff like that, you know, and when they get desperate, they're going to go do what desperate people do, and you can't blame them. I mean, like, you got a family, you got a kid, he hasn't ate in 2 days. I mean, you know, what are you going to
I mean, you look at what happened in 2020 and people started hoarding toilet paper.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, and that's a situation where all of a sudden shit got real.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of funny. Like, you'll go run into a kid. There's this one kid, Caleb. He lived up in this holler with his grandma, and he was more worried about Nutter Butters, combos, and the Wi-Fi than he was about the fresh water.
Everything but the Wi-Fi was also my biggest concern during any natural disaster.
Dude, yeah.
Starlink is pretty important.
Elon Musk could probably get elected president of the universe in Western North Carolina for providing free Starlink for up until, I think, right about now. In fact, he probably extended it. But
oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Starlink was up, and he's been doing that for free. That's the other thing too, is a lot of people don't know. So Elon Musk and Tesla and SpaceX have provided probably, I don't know, I couldn't even quantify the number, but let's just say lots and lots of money in terms of, like, he was throwing Starlinks out like candy, you know what I mean? Like, to everyone, anybody that needed it, anybody. The Tulsi Gabbard Foundation, actually, we worked a lot with Tulsi, and she is awesome. She's behind the scenes. She doesn't want anybody to know that she's doing anything. Sorry, Tulsi. But she's awesome, and her sister, V, they're really cool. They've been doing a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of organizations out there doing really, really cool things behind the scenes, not trying to take any credit or get any notoriety from anything. And those are the ones that have been truly effective. The ones that are like putting out the articles and stuff like that. They're sitting on $26 million, and you're like, bro, just like, here you go. You know, so there's been a lot of really good, it's heartening in a way, like, you know, September 12th, you know, when everyone's flying flags and all that kind of stuff. It was heartening to see everybody come together, but, you know, still folks there that need some help. So Western North Carolina, you know, go strong. I love that place.
Is there any particular group that you would recommend if someone's listening or watching or whatever and saying like, hey, I want to actually do something to help? Is there any group or groups that you'd recommend putting their resources towards?
If you want to make a financial contribution, I would say the Tulsi Gabbard Foundation, and specifically earmark it towards what, just say WNC, Western North Carolina Hurricane, or Hurricane Helene, or anything like that. And then I have a ragtag group of boys that are running under a business, an LLC called Element Rescue, and they are literally getting shit done. Like, we're, with Tulsi's help, I think we're I think we just bought 6 home kits of these modular home kits that go up. We've gotten a couple of well systems in. We've cleared an ungodly amount of brush and debris from roads, houses, all that kind of stuff. But these boys mostly, give a little shout out, Chainsaw Chuck, Adam Lunsford, Larry Globacar, and Ethan Sperry. Those boys have been doing search and recovery and rescue for months now. Like literally wading through chromium and lithium sanded like water, like in shit gear, looking for, bodies, still doing it. And none of the other people are doing it. And we're getting good federal assets now, get some good dogs. We need cadaver dogs like crazy. So those boys are doing good stuff. If you'd like to give some shout outs to Tulsi Gabbard and Element Rescue, are the 2.
Well, so Dustin, you've been staying pretty busy throughout your time, both in the Army and your time out, and you're coming up on damn near, 10 years out? No, 20 years out.
Yeah, next year. Holy shit, man.
20 years out.
Way to make me feel old real quick.
No, well, I'm just saying, and now you're starting this new role at Mission 43 as an engagement coordinator. So I think a lot of the people that, all 3 people that are watching this right now, they're going to start to see it quite a bit at all Mission 43 events. I'm curious, in your role and work with Chad and the engagement pillar, that we would call sometimes the fun stuff, whether it's outdoor recreation things, coffee hours, happy hours, fly tying, pickleball, you name it. What are you most excited about? Like, what are you looking forward to the most in taking on this new role? Because we're not a big team, and we're pretty selective, but we're also damn thankful to have you here. But what are you most excited about?
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's a tough question, man. What the hell? Well, I mean, I'm really grateful to have found. I mean, I keep looking over at Chad because he's over there.
He doesn't exist.
He does not exist. Yeah. Okay. I'm honestly really grateful. It was pretty obvious when I walked into the first in-person interview with you and Chad, the girls there. It was pretty obvious right away that you guys were good people.
Well, they are.
Yeah. I mean, you wear a pretty good mask, but I'm just saying, just kidding. It's pretty obvious that you all were good people. And so I'm excited about working with some good people that are passionate about a mission and passionate about what they do. So I'm excited about that. But honestly, I'm most excited because I've only been working for 2 days, but in the meetings and stuff that I've been in, the conversations, it sounds like Mission 43 is on the cusp of something of like exploding.
Or the tipping point, yeah.
Explosive growth. And I'm really excited to be brought on in that moment because I think I have a lot of good experience and good background, and I've got a lot of programmatic experience and expertise, really, that I think could help explode Mission 43 in the direction that it wants to go. And so I'm excited about being a part of that.
Oh, anyone that's been on a Mission 43 fishing event of any kind can tell you that we have zero expertise currently on the team until you come here. So this is a huge benefit to us, even though you're a fly fisherman, and we know that because you tell everyone.
Look, dude, if it's got a hook, I'll throw it in the water.
Good, because we're about to go ice fishing here later this month.
Hell yeah.
But I'm just extremely grateful to have you here, man. And there is if nothing else, there's a high give a shit factor and measure of authenticity and credibility in the people we have here. And that's, I think, what is the reason why you're here, is because you have that same type of drive that all the other good people in Mission 43 have, obviously excluding me. But, well, man, I'm super thankful for your time, and I'm super excited to get to know each other better and have you be a part of this family, because it's something that we care deeply about. And thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, man. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for the Mission 43 podcast. We hope you found it informative and helpful. If you have any questions or feedback, please comment below or email podcast@mission43.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast to stay up to date with new episodes. Be proud of your service, not defined by it. See you next time.